story of Abraham is one of the most well-known and impactful narratives in the entire Bible. As the father of the Judeo-Christian Islamic faith, Abraham's life and legacy have had a profound influence on billions of people across the world for thousands of years. However, while many are familiar with the broad strokes of Abraham's story, his call from God, his journey to the Promised Land, the birth of his son Isaac, the near sacrifice of Isaac, and so on, there are a number of surprising, little-known, and often overlooked details that add incredible depth and nuance to this iconic biblical figure. In this comprehensive exploration of the real story of Abraham nobody tells you, we will delve into the scriptures and uncover a multifaceted portrait of this towering patriarch that goes far beyond the Sunday school tales many of us grew up with. From the complex family dynamics that shaped Abraham's life, to the geopolitical and socio-cultural realities he navigated, to the profound spiritual struggles and revelations he experienced, this in-depth examination will shed new light on one of the most significant and influential biblical heroes of all time. To begin, it's important to understand the broader historical and cultural context in which Abraham lived. According to the biblical timeline, Abraham's life spanned roughly 175 years, from around 2166 BC to 1991 BC. This placed him squarely in the patriarchal age of ancient Mesopotamia, a pivotal era that saw the rise of the first major civilizations in human history. The region where Abraham hailed from, modern-day Iraq, was home to the mighty Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian empires, each of which left an indelible mark on the development of religion, government, technology, and society in the ancient world. Into this dynamic, ever-shifting geopolitical landscape, the biblical text introduces us to Abram, later called Abraham, a man whom God had singled out for a profound destiny. Abram was born in the city of Ur, which at the time was one of the preeminent urban centers of Mesopotamian civilization. As the son of Terah, an influential figure within Ur's thriving culture and economy, Abram would have been exposed from a young age to the religious pluralism and technological sophistication that characterized life in the ancient Near East. However, the book of Genesis tells us that Abram was called by the one true God to leave the pagan polytheism of Ur behind and embark on a journey to an unknown land. This divine summons, recorded in Genesis 12 verse 1, set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately transform not only Abram's life, but the entire trajectory of human history. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people and your father's household to the land I will show you." Scholars have long debated the precise motivations behind Abram's decision to heed God's call and undertake this momentous relocation. Was it a purely spiritual conviction, or were there also pragmatic, socio-political factors at play? The text suggests that Abram's father, Terah, may have already been in the process of leading his family on a migration from Ur when God intervened and redirected Abram's path. It's possible that Abram sensed an opportunity to forge a new destiny away from the constraints and influences of his family's established way of life. Regardless of the specific reasons, Abram's willingness to uproot himself and his household, which included his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and a sizable retinue of servants and livestock, and embark on a perilous journey to an unspecified destination was an act of profound faith and courage. The ancient Near East was a notoriously dangerous place, rife with warring kingdoms, shifting power dynamics, and constant threats of famine, disease, and banditry. For Abram to boldly step out in obedience to God's call, leaving the relative safety and security of his hometown behind, was a remarkable testament to his unwavering devotion. As Abram's caravan made its way northward from Ur along the Euphrates River, passing through the major Mesopotamian hubs of Haran and Damascus, the biblical narrative depicts a man who was increasingly coming to terms with the magnitude of the task before him. Though God had promised to make Abram into a great nation and to bless all peoples on earth through him, the practical realities of this covenantal pledge were not immediately clear. Abram and his wife, Sarai, were growing old, and they had yet to produce an heir, a critical prerequisite for the fulfillment of God's promise of nationhood. This tension between the grandeur of God's vision for Abram's life and the apparent obstacles standing in the way would become a recurrent theme throughout the patriarch's journey. Time and again, Abram would be forced to grapple with his own doubts and fears, to seek divine guidance and reassurance, and to make difficult choices that would test the depth of his faith. It's against this backdrop of spiritual and practical uncertainty that many of the most iconic moments in Abram's life unfold. Perhaps the most famous of these is the near sacrifice of Abram's son, Isaac, as recorded in Genesis 22. After years of waiting and trusting in God's promise of an heir, Abram and Sarai, now renamed Abraham and Sarah, had finally been blessed with the miraculous birth of their son. Yet just when it seemed that the long-awaited fulfillment of God's covenant was within reach, Abraham was subjected to an unthinkable test of his devotion. God commanded him to offer Isaac as a burnt offering. The anguish and inner turmoil that Abraham must have experienced in that moment is almost impossible for modern readers to fully comprehend. To be asked to sacrifice the very child who represented the culmination of God's grand plan for his life, it's a demand that would have shaken even the most steadfast of believers to their core. And yet, the biblical account depicts Abraham as responding with unwavering obedience, gathering the necessary supplies and setting out with Isaac for the appointed place of sacrifice. It's only at the last possible moment, when Abraham has raised the knife to slay his son, that an angel of the Lord intervenes and provides a ram as a substitute offering. This dramatic, climactic event not only solidifies Abraham's status as the supreme exemplar of faith, but also foreshadows the ultimate sacrifice that would one day be made on humanity's behalf through the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. But the near sacrifice of Isaac is just one of many powerful, paradigm-shifting moments in Abraham's life that deserve deeper exploration. Throughout the biblical narrative, we see this towering figure grappling with a host of other challenges and dilemmas that shed light on the depth and complexity of his character. For instance, there is the matter of Abraham's relationship with his nephew, Lot. When a dispute arises between their respective herdsmen over grazing rights, Abraham displays remarkable wisdom and maturity by offering Lot the first choice of where he and his family will settle. Genesis 13. Lot, in turn, selfishly chooses the lush, well-watered Jordan Valley, leaving Abraham with the less desirable hill country of Canaan. This decision would have profound consequences down the line, as Lot's choice to dwell in the wicked city of Sodom would ultimately lead to his family's near destruction. Similarly, Abraham's interactions with the various kings and rulers he encounters along his journeys reveal a man of shrewd political acumen and strategic foresight. When a coalition of 4 powerful Mesopotamian kings invades Canaan and captures Lot, Abraham marshals his own trained warriors to launch a daring nighttime rescue mission, demonstrating both his military prowess and his fierce loyalty to his kinsman. Genesis 14. And in his dealings with the Canaanite king Melchizedek, Abraham exhibits a spirit of humility and reverence, paying tithes and acknowledging Melchizedek's status as a priest of the Most High God. These episodes, and many others like them, serve to flesh out our understanding of Abraham as a multifaceted individual, not merely a one-dimensional paragon of faith, but a real human being grappling with the full spectrum of relational, political, and spiritual challenges that come with being called by God to play a pivotal role in the unfolding of human history. Woven throughout these narratives, moreover, are powerful insights into the nature of Abraham's relationship with the divine. Time and again, we see the patriarch engaging in intimate, dialogue-driven encounters with the Lord, receiving divine promises, guidance, and correction. From the initial call to leave Ur, to the covenant of circumcision, to the repeated affirmations of God's plan for Abraham's descendants, these theophanic experiences reveal the depth of Abraham's spiritual intimacy with the Almighty. Particularly striking is the way in which Abraham is depicted as boldly negotiating and even challenging God's decisions, as seen most vividly in his impassioned plea for the sparing of Sodom and Gomorrah, Genesis 18. Here, we witness Abraham's remarkable audacity in confronting the Lord, bargaining with him, and persistently advocating for mercy even in the face of impending judgment. This level of interactive, dialogical relationship with the divine is a testament to the unique spiritual stature that Abraham had attained through a lifetime of faithful obedience. At the same time, the biblical portrait of Abraham is not without its flaws and shortcomings. Like all the great heroes of faith chronicled in Scripture, the patriarch is presented as a complex, fallible human being who is not immune to moments of weakness, deception, and moral compromise. His repeated attempts to pass off his wife Sarah as his sister in order to save his own life, Genesis 12:20, for instance, reveal an unsettling lack of courage and trust in God's protection. And his decision to take Hagar, Sarah's Egyptian servant, as a concubine in order to produce an heir, Genesis 16, ultimately leads to deep familial discord and dysfunction. These blemishes on Abraham's otherwise exemplary record serve to underscore an essential truth about the nature of biblical heroism. The men and women celebrated in Scripture are not perfect, sinless icons, but rather flawed, struggling individuals who are nonetheless used by God to accomplish His purposes. Abraham's life is a testament to the reality that even the most towering figures of faith are susceptible to moral lapses and spiritual missteps, a truth that provides great encouragement and hope for believers today who grapple with their own shortcomings. Ultimately, what emerges from the biblical accounts of Abraham's life is a multidimensional portrait of a man who was simultaneously a visionary pioneer of monotheistic faith, a shrewd political operator, a devoted family patriarch, and a flawed human being in constant need of God's grace. Through his willingness to leave the comfort of his homeland, to trust in God's promises against all odds, and to engage in intimate dialogue with the divine, Abraham established a legacy that would reverberate through the ages, shaping the Judeo-Christian Islamic religious tradition and profoundly influencing the course of human civilization. In the final analysis, the real story of Abraham, the one that goes beyond the simplistic Sunday school narratives, is one of profound spiritual insight, hard-won wisdom, and a relentless quest to comprehend the mind and purposes of the Almighty. It is a story that challenges us to emulate Abraham's steadfast faith, his unwavering obedience, and his willingness to engage in the messy, complicated work of living out one's divine calling in the midst of a fallen world. For in the life of this towering biblical patriarch, we see reflected the very essence of what it means to be a person of faith, flawed, fallible, and yet beloved and empowered by the God who calls us to greatness.